Yes, I can hear you.
So one day, what happened is Vinder rang me up and said, "Brigadier, please come over. We have a bureaucrat who's going as an ambassador to China.
Okay.
He is also in Jaipur, and he wants to have a military briefing about India and China." He says, "So I don't know much about this. You seem to know a lot about it. Why don't you come over and have a cup of coffee with us and speak to this gentleman?" I said, fine. So I landed up at his officer's mess. And the person was a person called K.R. Narayanan. Now, if you recollect K.R. Narayanan, he went as our ambassador to China. He came back, he retired. Eventually, he joined the Congress party. Then he became the vice president of India and eventually became the president of India. He and I were very thick friends. So in this talk for about an hour and a half with K.R. Narayanan, we briefed him about the military business. He didn't seem to know much about it. And what is the problem that is possible between us and the Chinese on the northern border? I am talking of 1974 or early 75. See, 74. And he was very happy to talk to us. And he says, I am going to maintain touch with both of you, even while I'm an ambassador there. So if you have any military questions to be answered about the Chinese army or military systems, you must contact me. And I'll try my best to do this. Not that hard. Uh, why do I bring this point up? I said, because here is an intelligent man. Otherwise, in the foreign service and other services, they're very well educated, Mark. They have done far more education than what you do in the military. Many of the military people are senior Cambridge, intermediate science, maybe nowadays they are all BSc. But since they joined the military, their qualifications are military qualifications, isn't it? They go up in life. We have a lot of colleges of instruction which give degrees, but those degrees may not be accepted in civil life, you see, because they don't know the equivalence. So, but when it comes to the military art, what happens is that you get a very, very good view of all aspects of the country, not only the political governance, but the problems that are arising between the people in the government or between the tribes of India in the remote areas and the government. And you also have a very good knowledge about borders and what our neighbors are doing and what we are doing and what we ought to do, which the diplomatic corps may not know much about because they don't know the territory and they don't know the terrain, nor do they know the people living over there. So this association between foreign ministry and the military is very essential. Still not being done. Still not, unless you have personal relations. That makes many of the actions of the government. More of it later as I go on in this story. When you get into army headquarters, these problems arise, and I think our bureaucracy has to learn to come off the high horse and understand what the practical people on the ground are saying so that they give correct order. Because bureaucracy, as you know, they give the orders sometimes cleared by their politician, sometimes because they've done it on their own initiative, and sometimes those orders are so idiotic, things go wrong, and then they never take the blame. They blame you for not having done it correctly. You see? So we say that if you want to be a bureaucrat, you must have, of course, you've got the authority of government to give orders, but then you must take the responsibility for those orders. You don't pass off the responsibility to whoever has not been able to carry out an idiotic order. K.R. Narayanan was an example of an exception, shall I say, because he rose up very high through the diplomatic corps and then became eventually the president of India. Uh, now, we used to have a lot of parties, and my wife and I were invited to these parties, and there was a huge show run by corporate sector in the Taj Palace Hotel, not Taj Palace, but the Palace Hotel of Jaipur, and they had prizes. We didn't know about this. So I was dancing with my wife with something. It was a prize called Made for Each Other. And so we handily won this prize, made for each other. And the prize was one night free in the royal suite of the Palace Hotel. And then one meal at a restaurant, either in one big meal with friends, either in the Palace Hotel or in the main street of the main bazaar. There's some, I forget the name. It's a bandar. It's a sweet bandar. It's a hotel plus lovely sweets and restaurant and everything there. So we spent this one night and left the accommodation. I had got a posting order by then because I had finished my tenure and I had been selected to do the National Defense College. Now, the National Defense College is in Delhi. It's a 1 year's course. And you have to be a minimum brigadier level or a group captain and above in the Air Force. And you have foreign students and of the similar quality. And you have some civil servants and some diplomatic people, plus military, Army, Navy, Air Force. And it is a very important course of instruction for a military officer. It's called the National Defense College, and it's a 1 year's course. It's an MPhil degree, actually, of the Jawaharlal Nehru University. So I was selected to do this course. And so I was about to leave for Delhi. And there's a place in Delhi near the India Gate roundabout called Raksha Bhavan. You get accommodation there. Raksha Bhavan is a set of flats, very beautiful flats, large rooms, 3 bedrooms each, depending on the size of your family. And part of it is overlooking the central vista. So you can look out into what's happening on what was used to be the Rajpath, now the Kartavya Marg, and see what's going on over there from your windows and from your balcony. It's on that side of the central vista. So it's a prize posting for a military officer. And so I was about to leave. And so Surupi had to move with her children. We had to leave the official house, as we do in the army, move to a temporary building. And another brigadier from Armored Corps called Kailash Dhori came forward and took over from me. And he had been a military attaché in Pakistan. So he had a lot of knowledge about Pakistan. Anyway, he took over the brigade and I handed over to him. And Surupi remained with the children because of the examinations for a few months. Meanwhile, I moved to Delhi, to the National Defense College. This was a very interesting period in our country's history. This was 1975. The course starts in January and finishes in November of the year, 1975. Now, 1975, you recollect, was the time when Indira Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister, decided to lift the emergency. She had put the emergency in Delhi, in the country, in 1973 or thereabout. And when 1975 started, she let it be known that there'll be an election. And depending on the results of the election, we will lift the emergency. So it is a very interesting period. At that period also, a new party was raised. The opposition parties of the Congress were very few. The Swatantra Party didn't get very many seats in the parliament. And the new party, there was the Jan Sangh, there was the Janata Party, and eventually that converted to the BJP. So BJP was the new party just started. They were also going to try and get into this parliament. And if you recollect in 1975 when the election took place, I think they got a couple of 2 seats or something out of 540. Anyway, so I moved to Raksha Bhavan in Delhi. And maybe a month later, after the children's exams were over, Surupi and the children also joined me. Not Vikram, my son, because he was in college. But the 2 girls joined. And we put them into schools in Delhi. In the National Defense College, what you do is you study India and you study the superpowers. You study your neighboring countries. and you study countries which are upcoming. What do you study? You study what is their economy, how is their GDP going to grow, what is their leadership like, what is their military system like, what is the economic system like, what are the various industries that they have. In other words, what is the power of that country, which is a mixture of economy, of industry, of trade, and governance, and also military. So that you realize what would be their aims. Now, this is a 10 months or 11 month study. So the first study is India. So we were doing Indian study, and the main question was that what happens in this coming election? Firstly, why was the emergency declared? That was declared in 1973. And 71 war was the winner. In 1973, they declared the emergency. And 1975, she was going to lift it. See? So, since the election was due sometime April, May, we had a few months to study this. And we were studying this. And there are various visits that the National Defense College arranges for its students. For the study of India, you make visits to various industries all over the country. So you divide the course comprised in those days of about 60 officers, of which about maybe 15 were foreigners from Canada and USA and UK and Australia. And there was one from Afghanistan also, of the erstwhile Kingdom of Afghanistan, a colonel. Plus, there are approximately 3 or 4 civil service officers, and there are about 3 or 4 police officers. So we have a good group, and these are all divided into various syndicates, and each syndicate is given a different place to visit. So since there are about 50, 60 officers, you may have about 5 or 6 syndicates with about 10 people each. And these syndicates can go on different tours. Somebody goes to South India, somebody goes to East India, somebody goes to West India for the industrial tour. We were lucky enough with 2 of my friends to go to Bangalore and to Kerala to see the various industries of India, including the petrochemical industry in Kerala. For instance, and we went to Goa also because there is a private petrochemical industry in Goa, the Suarez Industries or something. And Indian government-run industries, petrochemical in Kerala, in Cochin, brand new setup, was making no profit. And this old Suarez chemical industries in Goa, privately run, are making a lot of profit. So answer, why are they making profit and why is the government not making profit? So more about this in a little while. One of the big questions was, how is the election going to turn out now that Indira Gandhi decided the election? Firstly, why did she decide to go for election when she's the boss? I must tell you, when the emergency took place, I was a brigadier, I noticed that a lot of discipline came into this country. Trains were running on time. Connaught Place in Delhi, which we used to go and visit, was spotlessly clean. Dirt had been removed. All the sweeping staff and the municipalities and all that were told, if anybody doesn't do his work, we'll sack you, right? All over the country, the efficiency of the governance certainly improved. But then that is a dictatorship, right? And not a democracy. Question was, is a dictatorship more advantageous
Right.
than a democracy? In democracy is a loud shouting match going on in your parliament, and everybody does his own thing. You have the courts of law, etc., and anything that you do which is considered incorrect, you contest that.
Right.
So it goes to the courts, take 10 years, 15 years, 20 years before a decision is made. Therefore, a lot of stuff is done which is not perhaps correct for the country, right? Whereas in a dictatorship like China and like Soviet Union was earlier, you give an order, it's done on the spot. See, so we are discussing all this. And many of our, especially the bureaucratic friends and others, and us, some of our staff. Our staff were 3 military generals,
Okay.
and the commandant was an Air Force Lieutenant Air Marshal, Gadio, very fine man. And there were 2, 3 civilian staff who were of the Joint Secretary rank, from the one was from the Foreign Ministry and one was from the Home Ministry. So they said that democracy means that it's. I just say that the answer to this is very complicated, but the loud noise and lack of fast decision making in democracy allows people to develop their own brains to think of what they should do. Whereas in a dictatorship, the people don't use their head, they hear what the order is and they do that. That is a disadvantage. If you take China, for instance, everybody should please Mr. Xi Jinping. If he says jump, you've got to jump. In India, if somebody tells you jump, you say, why should I jump? Why aren't you jumping? So there is your individual brain. So eventually, as we saw in World War I and in World War II, the democracies did defeat the dictatorial nations as Hitler, or whether it was the Kaiser, or the Japan for that matter. Anyway, this discussion takes place there. And we were living in Rakshabad. So we had a carpool. So there were 4 of us in this carpool. There was myself, and it was 4 people all had to own cars. So we should bring our cars turn by turn and pick up our friends, because instead of going in an empty car with yourself, you take 3 others, and your car is only used once in 4 times, 4 of them. So we had an Air Force group captain who was a test pilot. A person called Group Captain Bobby Day. He retired as an Air Marshal. And we had Lieutenant Colonel from the infantry, Sardarji, who retired as a Major General eventually. And we had myself, and we had an Army Service Corps officer who was a Lieutenant Colonel from the ASC, rather Brigadier from the ASC, and he retired from the ASC as a Brigadier. But 4 of us were in the carpool. So we were discussing in the carpool as to, oh, Indira Gandhi has ordered this election, what is going to be the result? So we decided, we were arguing about it. So we said, let's have a sweepstake. You know what a sweepstake is? Let's put it out to everybody. The question that we raised was, how many votes will Indira Gandhi get out of 540? How many seats will she get in the parliament? Because she was a dictator, and so 540 people in the parliament. How many seats is she going to get in this election? So we put it out to our colleagues who are the other students in the National Defense College, or NDC as we call it. They said, yes, yes. What is the stake? He said, you give 10 rupees, a 10 rupee note, and a slip of paper with your name, your telephone number, and with a figure to say how many seats she's going to get. You see? So these 10 rupees, I think the whole of the National Defense Colony, within 2 days, everybody had given 10 rupees and given a vote as to how many seats this lady is going to get. And the staff came to know. You know, staff comprises not only the directing staff and the commandant, but the clerks and the peons and all that sort of thing. They all came to know this is we are also absurd. So we say, you put your 10 rupees and put your name and number, and let us have the number of seats. So we, in a matter of minutes, we had the whole National Defense College voting whatever way they wanted. Then somebody informed the Ministry of Defense, because we had, we were reporting to the Ministry of Defense. It's a Ministry of Defense College. So the whole of Ministry of Defense started, the peons, the diplomats, the secretaries and everybody, military headquarters, Navy and Air Force headquarters, they all voted. And then they came to the Foreign Ministry, they all voted, you see. So with that, we collected about 10,000-15,000 rupees, 10 rupees a shot. However, on the industrial tour, when the elections took place, and within so many days, the election was to be announced. So we were happened to be in Goa. It was the last day in Goa, and we had all decided that we should go for dinner. We had a directing staff with us. He was an Admiral Bindra from the Navy. So Admiral Bindra, Rear Admiral Bindra, he was in charge of our group, and we'd invited him also that look, all of us are going to share, and let's have a good meal in one of these Goanese restaurants and drink some Goanese Feni, that wine that they produce, and enjoy our evening. It's the last evening. Next day we were flying back to Delhi. So then somebody remembered that, look here, that election results are going to be announced at 8 o'clock in the evening. So these election results, we were at the dinner table when somebody remembered these election results would be on the 8 o'clock news from All India Radio.
Yeah.
So we looked around and one of the officers said, I've got a transistor radio in my room.
Yeah.
So we allowed him to leave the table and go and get his transistor radio so that we could hear it. Then we had two other members of our group which were running the show. One was this group captain Day, who had the list of all the people who had voted and how they had voted. See? I said, have you got the list here? He says, yes, I've got the list here. So then we had a member from the Military Lands and Hiring Department of the Government of India. He's a civil servant. He had the cash because he's from the civil servant, so they look after cash very carefully. And so he said, I've got all the cash. He said, got all the cash. So we said, very good. So we all listened to this news. And out of 540 seats, Indira Gandhi managed about 81 seats. And the voting was from 350 to about 250. So the person who was nearest, the man who had voted for 250, he won the sweepstake. See? So that was duly allotted to him. So he got 10,000 odd rupees with it. But it just goes to show what people thought and what actually happened. So it's a disaster for the Congress party when they went for election. And it shows maybe in our country we don't like dictatorships. And it's not going to be accepted by the people. So that's an interesting experience about the lifting of the emergency which happened in the National Defense College. Now, National Defense College, we have a trip abroad also. But what happened is after Indira Gandhi lost the election, she was no longer the Prime Minister. A person called Moraji Desai, who was 80 years old, from Gujarat. He's also a Congress party member, but he had started a slightly different party. He was objecting to Sanjay Gandhi, that's the son of Indira Gandhi, that method of birth control where you used to force people into an operation even when they were not even married. See? The men especially. So he said no birth control in India. The result that gave good fillip to our population. But he became the Prime Minister. Now he was a very interesting man from the point of view that he was 80 years old, but he looked very young. He, as they say, drank his own, and he ate only nuts and berries and things like that, which are very good for health and very expensive market. And he had very good skin, and he had all that. So he became the Prime Minister. And he curtailed what was known as unnecessary expenditure of the government. In which case our foreign tour, which we used to go to Canada and to America and to Japan and to England and all that, was curtailed. They said you can't go anywhere else, you can only go to neighboring countries. So I happened to visit, because of that, Iran, Iraq, and Jordan, which is the neighboring countries. Other people went to Singapore and Malaysia and all that area, and Indonesia. An interesting point happened when we were visiting Iran. The Shah was in charge. Pahlavi, the king of Iran, who, as you know, was later overthrown by the Mullah revolution in Persia, in Iran. We landed up in Tehran and in a hotel, and the streets were full of traffic. So full of traffic that traffic is going about 2 kilometers now. So we had to visit the military headquarters of Iran to talk to the top chiefs and all that sort of thing. And if possible, be introduced to the Shah. The hotel kept saying, it's a 2.5 kilometer distance. If you go by the luxury bus that we've laid on, it's going to take you 1.5 hours to reach there. If you walk, it will take you 15 to 20 minutes to reach there. So we all prefer to walk. So we walk the streets of Tehran to go to the military headquarters from our hotel. And I must tell you, they're beautiful people, latest fashions. The ladies were in high heels and short skirts and things like that. Very good looking, very well done up. Men were very smart and handsome, you see, wearing t-shirts or whatever they are. And it's a delight to see these people laughing, joking in the streets of Tehran. This is before the Mullah Revolution, right? Now, when we reached the headquarters, we were unable to meet the Shah. Reza Pahlavi was his name, because he was busy with something. But we met his number 2, and we met the 3 military chiefs of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. They gave us their briefing. And one of the Armored Corps colonels was our liaison officer. So since he was a tank corps and I was also from the tanks, I want to talk to him, what sort of tanks have you got and what's your training like and all that sort of thing. He gave me some very good answers, well trained. And I asked him, when are you likely to go up for promotion? He sort of raised his hand and looked up at the roof. I said, you mean God is the one who will give you a promotion? He said, no, the Shah is the God. If he likes me, I'll be promoted. If he doesn't like me, no chance. You see? So this is a dictatorship, and we took a rather poor view of the situation because the military, etc., only depended on one man's view. Now, in a military system, you must not let politics or let us say civilian leadership to control things like promotion and appointments in the military. It has to be done by military people. You'll notice the difference in our police. Police is required to be under the chief minister of a state, you see, or under the home minister in the central area. Now all their promotions and all their everything is dependent on a political man. With the result, they are kowtowing to the politics all the time and not serving the people as they should. So we have raised points that even in the police, it should be organized so that the Director General Police or whoever is in charge is the man who does promotions and postings, and he must not be interfered with for a period of time that is his official service, unless he does something wrong. But if every minute, if he doesn't agree to what his minister has told him, he gets sacked and somebody else is put there. So that's no way of running a show. And that's what happened in Iran. It does not happen in our army. Our army functions entirely by ourselves. Yes, all promotions have to be accepted by the government, but they are very reluctant to change what the Chief of Army Staff's board, or Chief of Naval Staff's board, or the Chief of Air Staff's board suggests, because there are a lot of argument. If they say, oh, why are you promoting so-and-so and not promoting so-and-so, we said, because you people are trying to favor that person. He's a junior man, he's not returned, whatever the reason. So there is a lot of up and down between the Ministry of Defense and us, depending on the political view and our view. But at least we have a say. But in Iran, we found there was no say. It's all Shah. So when we came back here, I was the leader of that group. We wrote a report for our Ministry of Defense on our visit to Iran. And we did have occasion to say that as long as the Shah is there, this country is not going to survive very long. There's likely to be a revolution because cars can't move, streets are full, organization of transport and traffic is not good enough. And the military and police are at the service of a single man who his whims and desires function, and that's not the way to run a country. And sure enough, he was overthrown within 6 months of this. And the Mullah revolution took place, and they took over. I don't know exactly how the mullahs are controlling the place. You know, in the press today, there's a lot of agitation among the ladies, because one of the ladies didn't have that cover of the face, the abaya, what you call it. and she was captured by the moral police, and the poor thing died. Now, it's not very clear how she died, but people believe that she was probably thrashed or something. And with the result, there's a lot of agitation. Many of the women are cutting their hair and burning up their face covers. It's very bit different to what's happening with the Kerala girls. Our Kerala girls are insisting on wearing it, and those girls are insisting on taking it off. Anyway, you see where that goes. It's an interesting point. Anyway, the men are not covering their faces. Why should the women cover their faces? I don't know. It's a bit of a logic. You're a free human being. If you feel like covering it, you can. But what for? And from the identity point of view, if you want to, there's a lot of security problems. You want to make sure that people entering certain buildings and social buildings are seen properly.
Right.
If your face covered and all that, it's not easy to see whether you're a terrorist carrying a bomb or not.
Right.
Many terrorists in India, by the way, Muslim terrorists, are dressed in burqas. They carry a bomb inside that thing. So when you camouflage yourself, it's a bit of a danger for the rest. So much for our visit to Iran. I did 1 year in the NDC, and I must say it was a very interesting period because we did so many studies. At the end of the day, after 10 months, we had a meeting of all the syndicates where you decide what is the future for India, what should be its administration, what should be its military force, how much money should you spend compared to all your studies.
Right.
And the consensus that you have to get consensus. Everybody has a different view. You have to get consensus. I talked about Indira Gandhi's election. When our syndicate came back, we had an interesting period. We had gone to a remote village in Haryana. It was a Congress village. The Pradhan was Congress and the administration was Congress. The village Panchayat was all Congress members. And we asked this person, how is he developing the poor people? So he said, we've given a room to every house and all that, and we walked around to see these rooms in people's houses. But there was one Dalit family with no room. So we went inside there, and there was this lady. She had 4 or 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. She was cooking the food, with Chula was the cooking was so small. She was struggling with the baby, and said, room. She said, I'm a Dalit woman. Never give me a room. So we told, hello, there's a Pradhan of it, she's a boss of it. You said you haven't given a room to that woman who's a Dalit. She's struggling. Why don't you help her? He said, well, she's low caste, we don't have to help her. He said, no, that's not wrong. You have to help everybody. Then we got into discussion with them. That according to your Congress party, you have to help everybody. So why aren't you doing it generally? So there were 3 of us talking to him, myself and 2 others. So he looked at us, he said, want me to tell you the truth? Yes, that's the truth. He said, is there any police officer amongst you? We said, no, there is a police officer in our there are 3 police officers in our force, but they're not in this group. They have gone in some other group to some other place. So one of us, I'm from the army, there's one chap from the Air Force, and one chap is a foreigner. He was from America or something. He said, the truth is that we are a Congress village, but we are not going to vote for that woman. He said, why? He said, because we've told her that I am the Pradhan and I should be the one appointed by the Congress party as the Pradhan. She appoints the Pradhan from Delhi. So why should somebody appoint we know the politics of the village. Why is the Pradhan Mantri and her group appointing even the very headman? So we said, how are you going to vote? We are not going to vote for her. But that is unofficial. Officially, we are voting. So when we went for the consensus meeting after every trip there's a consensus meeting. Ours was the only syndicate which had some doubts about Indira Gandhi's election. Everybody else said that she'll come in with massive majority. She's the Durga of India. She won the 71 war and she'll have a massive majority. And she got only 80 seats, as I told you. Now, in the final of the National Defense College, you have a consensus about India and its armed forces, etc. And we managed to get a consensus on one point, that India must remain a democracy, but a democracy with a danda. Democracy with a stick, in other words. Because Indians are not disciplined. If you go to foreign countries with a good democracy, they at least have a civic sense. They will not throw paper on the street. They will not spoil the public utilities, you know. They won't steal from railway carriages. Perhaps they're better off. Now, Indians were poverty stricken, but nonetheless, when we go to railway stations, you don't tear up a cushion and take it away home. And all that. So there needs to be a little more discipline, and the discipline means a bit of danda. But the National Defense College staff would not agree with this. They say, if you have a danda, then it's not a democracy, it's a dictatorship.
Right.
See? So we said, look, we have to be halfway somewhere. That was our opinion. I don't know what your view is or how it turns out, but a certain amount of civic sense must be enforced in this country. And a certain amount of discipline has to be enforced because we don't have it. For instance, the Prime Minister says, keep your place clean. Even he has taken a broom and cleaned up the streets. But still, people will litter the streets. So we have to have severe punishments for people who don't have civic sense, who are caught stealing from civil areas,
Right.
or who are caught doing defecation or urination all over the place. We have to take severe action against these people. That certain amount of civic sense has to be inculcated before a democracy will function the way it should. Enough. But I'm a military man, maybe I'm a bit harsh on those thoughts. But I suppose we'll get there in due course of time. There are a lot of